Cop assaults woman in court, what he didn't know changed everything. Shut your mouth, lady, I don't care who you think you are. These words, barked by Officer Mark Donnelly across a silent courtroom, immediately establish a high-stakes conflict rooted in institutional arrogance and the abuse of authority. The raised hand, the dismissive tone, the weaponization of a badge, this is where unchecked power collides with concealed consequence. Angela Brooks, dressed in an elegant tan suit with understated jewelry, is met with immediate hostility as she approaches the witness stand in courtroom 5B. Despite her calm demeanor and measured tone, she is subjected to public humiliation and escalating aggression. Donnelly mistakes her for a defendant, cuts off her attempts to clarify her role, and ultimately strikes her across the shoulder when she suggests he verify her credentials. The introduction ends with a chilling declaration from Angela to the stunned courtroom: "This will be addressed through every lawful channel available to me," setting the stage for a calculated dismantling of the system that protects men like him. 20 minutes earlier, Angela Brooks had entered the federal courthouse through the main entrance on Madison Street, her heels clicking against marble floors that had witnessed 40 years of American jurisprudence. She carried a slim leather portfolio containing character reference notes from Marcus Chen, a former law clerk who'd worked under her supervision 3 years prior. The hearing was routine, a bar admission formality, and she'd expected to be in and out within an hour. Officer Mark Donnelly noticed her the moment she passed through the metal detector. His eyes tracked her tan suit, the understated gold watch, the confident stride of someone who belonged. But something in his expression suggested he'd already decided otherwise. "Excuse me, ma'am." His voice carried across the security checkpoint with practiced authority. "What's your business here today?" Angela turned, her smile polite but professional. "I'm testifying in courtroom 5B. Character witness." Donnelly's eyebrows lifted in theatrical disbelief. "Character witness." He repeated the words slowly, as if testing their validity. "For who, exactly?" "Marcus Chen. It's a bar admission hearing." "Aha." Donnelly stepped closer, his badge catching the overhead fluorescent light. "And you got documentation for that?" "Because we've had problems with people wandering into the wrong building. Family court's across the street. Social services is 2 blocks down." The implication hung between them like smoke. Angela's fingers tightened imperceptibly on her portfolio. "Officer, I assure you I'm in the correct building. Judge Brennan is expecting me at 9:30. That's a fancy suit for a witness." Donnelly's tone had shifted from skeptical to openly mocking. "You sure you're not here for something else? Maybe you got confused about which hearing was yours." A court clerk passing by glanced at them, then quickly looked away. Angela recognized the gesture, the deliberate blindness that allows small cruelties to flourish in institutional spaces. She kept her voice level, her posture unchanged. "Officer Donnelly." She'd noted his nameplate. "I'd appreciate if you'd direct me to courtroom 5B. "I'd appreciate," he mimicked, "if you'd show me some respect. This is my courthouse, sweetheart. And I decide who belongs here." The courthouse security office smelled of stale coffee and old paperwork. Angela sat in a metal folding chair, her shoulder still throbbing where Donnelly's hand had connected. Chief of Security Raymond Kowalski listened to her account with the weary expression of a man who'd heard it all before. "Ms. Brooks, I understand you're upset." "Chief Judge Brooks," Angela corrected quietly. Kowalski's pen paused mid-stroke. "I'm sorry. My title is Chief Judge Brooks. I was appointed to the federal bench 4 months ago. My formal installation ceremony is next week." The color drained from Kowalski's face, but he recovered quickly. Too quickly. "Well, look, Your Honor, I'm sure there was just a misunderstanding. Donnelly's been with us 18 years. Exemplary record. Maybe in the chaos of the courtroom." "There was no chaos," Angela said. "There was an assault. Witnessed by 12 people, including Judge Brennan." Kowalski shifted in his chair. "Between you and me, Mark's under a lot of stress. His daughter's in college, his wife's been sick. Sometimes good officers have bad days. Maybe we could handle this internally. Training, counseling, that sort of thing. Angela stood, her tan suit somehow looking more authoritative than Kowalski's uniform. I want a formal incident report filed. I want the courtroom audio preserved. And I want Officer Donnelly suspended pending investigation. Your Honor, with all due respect, that seems. Chief Kowalski, are you refusing to file my complaint? Silence settled over the cramped office like fog. Kowalski's fingers drummed against his desk, then he pulled out a standard form. I'll log it. But I'm telling you, Mark's got friends. Union's gonna fight this. You might want to think about whether this is the hill you want to die on. Angela placed her business card on his desk. Have the report sent to my attorney. Her name is Rebecca Martinez. Federal civil rights law is her specialty. She walked out knowing the complaint would be buried within 48 hours. Vincent Caruso stood before the jury like a man defending the Alamo. His silver hair gleamed under the courtroom lights, his voice carrying the practiced gravitas of 3 decades in criminal defense. He'd represented police unions, sheriff's departments, and corrections officers across 4 states. This case, he'd told reporters on the courthouse steps, was an outrage. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is a tragedy. Not the tragedy Ms. Brooks would have you believe, but the tragedy of a good man's reputation being destroyed by political opportunism. Caruso gestured toward Donnelly, who sat ramrod straight in a pressed uniform, his face arranged in wounded dignity. Officer Mark Donnelly has served this courthouse for 18 years. 18 years without a single sustained complaint. 18 years of protecting judges, protecting witnesses, protecting people like Ms. Brooks. Angela sat at the plaintiff's table, her expression neutral, her hands folded over a yellow legal pad. Rebecca Martinez, her attorney, made no objection. They discussed this strategy: let Caruso build his tower of lies as high as possible. The fall would be more spectacular. Now, the plaintiff wants you to believe my client is some kind of monster. That he attacked her without provocation, in front of a dozen witnesses, in the middle of a federal courthouse. Caruso's laugh was incredulous. Does that make sense to you? Why would a veteran officer with everything to lose suddenly assault a woman he'd never met? He paused, letting the question settle. I'll tell you why this case exists. Ms. Angela Brooks has an agenda. She's a vocal critic of law enforcement. She's written articles, given speeches, attended protests. And when Officer Donnelly asked her, politely, professionally, to follow courtroom protocol, she saw an opportunity. An opportunity to become a victim. An opportunity to advance her cause. An opportunity to destroy a good man's life. Caruso's voice dropped to a near whisper. Don't let her succeed. Angela's pen moved across her legal pad in steady, precise strokes. She was taking notes. And she was smiling. The courtroom fell silent as Angela Brooks was sworn in. Her right hand rested on the Bible, her left at her side. She wore a charcoal gray suit today, severe, professional, deliberate. As she settled into the witness chair, every eye in the room tracked her movements. Rebecca Martinez approached with a gentle smile. Ms. Brooks, can you tell the jury what happened on the morning of September 14th? Angela's voice was steady, clinical, empty of inflection. I entered the federal courthouse at approximately 9:15 a.m. to provide character testimony in a bar admission hearing. After clearing security, I was approached by Officer Donnelly, who questioned my presence in the building. How did that make you feel? I felt nothing in particular. I assumed it was routine verification. What happened next? Officer Donnelly implied I was in the wrong building. When I explained my purpose, he made comments about my attire and suggested I was confused about which hearing I was attending. I attempted to clarify my role. He told me to shut my mouth, and that he didn't care who I thought I was. When I suggested he verify my credentials, he struck me across the shoulder and ordered security to remove me. Martinez nodded slowly. You say he struck you. Can you describe the physical contact? A backhanded blow to my left shoulder. Sufficient force to cause bruising that lasted 11 days. And your emotional state during this encounter? Controlled. Calm. I was aware the situation was being recorded and that any emotional reaction could be weaponized against me. Vincent Caruso rose for cross-examination, his expression somewhere between sympathy and skepticism. Ms. Brooks, you've described yourself as controlled and calm. Is that accurate? Yes. No fear. No anger. No distress. I felt all three. I chose not to display them. Because you knew you were being recorded? Because I knew my credibility would be judged by my composure. Caruso let that answer hang in the air, then smiled. Ms. Brooks, isn't it true that someone genuinely traumatized by an assault would show emotion? Tears, perhaps. Shaking hands. A trembling voice. Angela met his eyes without blinking. Mr. Caruso, I've spent 25 years in courtrooms. I'm trained not to show emotion. Or, Caruso suggested softly, you're not showing emotion because nothing traumatic actually happened. Rebecca Martinez didn't object. She simply made a note and smiled at her legal pad. The defense was digging the hole exactly as deep as Angela needed. The manila folder landed on the defense table with a sound like a judge's gavel. Rebecca Martinez stood before the bench, her expression grim. Your Honor, we'd like to introduce Defense Exhibit 47, Internal Affairs Records for Officer Mark Donnelly, obtained via federal subpoena. Vincent Caruso shot to his feet. Objection. Those records are sealed personnel files, which are admissible under federal civil rights statute when establishing a pattern of misconduct, Martinez countered. The court has already ruled on this. Judge Hendricks, a gray-haired woman with 30 years on the bench, nodded curtly. Overruled. Proceed, Ms. Martinez. The jury listened in growing horror as Martinez detailed 23 prior complaints against Donnelly. 14 involved accusations of racial profiling, black defendants told they looked suspicious, Hispanic witnesses questioned about immigration status, an Asian attorney asked if she was really licensed to practice law here. 6 complaints alleged excessive force, rough handling during routine searches, unnecessary restraints, aggressive physical contact during minor disputes. Every single complaint had been settled with non-disclosure agreements. Not one had resulted in discipline. Then Martinez called Jerome Williams to the stand. He was 43, a former courthouse clerk who now worked in private legal research. His hands shook slightly as he was sworn in. Mr. Williams, how long did you work in this courthouse? 7 years. 2015 to 2022. And during that time, did you have interactions with Officer Donnelly? Jerome's jaw tightened. Every day. He was assigned to my floor. Can you describe those interactions? He called me, boy, for 3 years straight. Never my name. Just, boy. When I corrected him, he'd laugh and say he was from a different generation. When I filed a complaint with HR, they told me I was being oversensitive. Jerome's voice cracked. 2 weeks later, I was transferred to the basement archives. No explanation. Just reassigned. And Officer Donnelly? Still on the same floor. Still calling the next black clerk boy. The jury box was silent. 2 jurors were crying. Vincent Caruso stared at his notes, his silver tongue finally useless. Angela watched from the plaintiff's table, her expression unchanged. But her fingers, resting on her legal pad, had formed a fist. The courtroom's audiovisual system hummed to life, and suddenly everyone was back in courtroom 5B on September 14. Rebecca Martinez stood beside the projection screen, remote control in hand, while forensic audio specialist Dr. Patricia Vance sat in the witness box. Dr. Vance, can you explain what we're about to hear? The white-haired expert adjusted her glasses. This is the complete, unedited audio recording from Courtroom 5B's digital archival system. The defense claimed the original recording was corrupted or incomplete. I was able to retrieve the full file from the backup server and restore it to pristine quality. And you're certain this is authentic? Absolutely. The metadata is intact, the timestamp is verifiable, and the audio signature matches the courthouse's standard recording equipment. Martinez pressed play. The first voice was Angela's, calm, measured, professional. Officer, I'm scheduled to testify in the Chin hearing. If you'll check with Judge Brennan's clerk. Then Donnelly's interruption, sharp and contemptuous, I don't need to check anything, lady. You people always think you run the place. A collective intake of breath from the jury. The phrase, you people, hung in the air like acid. Angela's response, Officer, I suggest you check my credentials before you continue. Then the unmistakable sound of flesh striking flesh, a sharp crack that made several jurors flinch. Gasps from courtroom observers. Angela's voice, slightly strained, you just assaulted me. Donnelly's final command, someone get this woman out of my courtroom. Now. Dr. Vance stopped the playback. I've analyzed the audio at multiple frequency levels. The impact occurs at timestamp 9 hours 27 minutes and 43 seconds. The sound signature is consistent with an open-handed strike. And before the defense asks, there's no evidence of tampering, editing, or fabrication. Vincent Caruso's face had gone the color of old concrete. He stood slowly, his famous silver tongue apparently still searching for words. Dr. Vance, could the audio be misinterpreted? Sir, you can hear the slap. It's unmistakable. But the phrase, you people, could refer to. Mr. Caruso, Dr. Vance interrupted, her tone suddenly sharp, I'm a forensic expert, not a linguist. But I have ears. And I know exactly what I heard. The recording played again. And again. Each repetition was another nail in Donnelly's coffin. Mark Donnelly took the oath with his hand steady, his uniform impeccable. Vincent Caruso had coached him well, maintain eye contact, speak clearly, project confidence. A jury believes a defendant who looks them in the eye. Officer Donnelly, in your own words, what happened on September 14th? I was performing my duties as courtroom bailiff. Ms. Brooks approached the witness stand without authorization. When I asked her to wait in the gallery, she became verbally combative. I gently guided her away from the restricted area to de-escalate the situation. At any point did you strike Ms. Brooks? Absolutely not. I may have touched her elbow to redirect her, but it was minimal contact. Standard crowd control. Caruso nodded with satisfaction. And when she claims you said, you people, what did you actually say? I said, you need to wait with the other people in the gallery. She misheard me. It was a clean story. Rehearsed, plausible, delivered with conviction. The problem was that Rebecca Martinez had the recording. She approached the witness stand like a shark circling wounded prey. Officer Donnelly, you testified under oath that Ms. Brooks was verbally combative. Can you define that term for the jury? She was being loud and disruptive. Loud. I see. Martinez pulled up the audio analysis on the screen. Dr. Vance's forensic examination measured Ms. Brooks' voice at 52 decibels during your encounter. That's the volume of a normal conversation. Would you consider normal conversation loud? Donnelly's jaw tightened. She was aggressive in her tone. We have the audio, officer. The jury can judge her tone themselves. Let me ask you something else. You stated you gently guided Ms. Brooks away from the witness stand. Correct? Yes. By touching her elbow? That's correct. Martinez played the recording again. The sharp crack of the slap echoed through the courtroom. Officer Donnelly, does that sound like an elbow touch to you? The audio can be misleading. It can be misleading, or you were lying. I misspoke. You misspoke under oath. Martinez's voice was surgical now, cutting through his defenses with precision. Officer Donnelly, were you lying in your previous testimony, or are you lying now? Donnelly's face flushed red. I was trying to answer the question. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? Silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Vincent Caruso half rose from his seat, but there was no objection to make. The question was devastating because it was fair. I misremembered, Donnelly finally said. Martinez smiled. You misremembered assaulting a federal judge? The courtroom erupted. During the afternoon recess, Rebecca Martinez approached the bench with an unusual request. Your Honor, my client needs 15 minutes to retrieve additional evidence from her vehicle. We'd like to recall her to the stand. Judge Hendricks frowned. Ms. Martinez, we're near closing arguments. What additional evidence could possibly? Your Honor, I assure you it's relevant. Critically relevant. Caruso objected, of course, but Hendricks allowed it. The jury filed back in 14 minutes later, expectant and confused. The plaintiff's table was empty. Then the rear courtroom doors opened. Angela Brooks entered wearing a black judicial robe, the federal crest embroidered in gold on her left breast. The robe's 3 stars, signifying Chief Judge, gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Her bearing had shifted from victim to authority in the span of a costume change. The courtroom went silent. Judge Hendricks rose instinctively, her face pale. Your Honor. I had no idea you were. Angela's voice was calm, almost gentle. That's the problem, Judge Hendricks. He didn't either. She gestured toward Donnelly, who sat frozen at the defense table, his face drained of color. May I approach the bench? It wasn't really a question. Angela walked past the plaintiff's table, past the jury box, past the stenographer, and stood before Judge Hendricks. The 2 judges spoke in whispers for 30 seconds. Then Hendricks stepped down. Angela took her seat. The gavel, Judge Hendricks' gavel, was now in Angela's hand. She surveyed the courtroom with the expression of someone who'd finally stopped playing a role and stepped into her true self. This court will come to order. Vincent Caruso found his voice. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Mr. Caruso, I'm aware of the irregularities. I'm also aware that your client assaulted a sitting federal judge, committed perjury in my presence, and attempted to use his position to intimidate an officer of the court. Irregular doesn't begin to cover what's happening here. She turned to Donnelly. Officer Donnelly, please stand. He rose on shaking legs, his uniform suddenly looking less like armor and more like a costume. You asked me who I thought I was, Angela said quietly. Let me answer that question now. The courtroom felt smaller with Angela behind the bench. Officer Mark Donnelly stood before her like a man watching his life collapse in real time. His attorney had gone silent. The jury sat transfixed. Even the court stenographer's fingers had paused over the keys. Officer Donnelly. Angela's voice carried the weight of 25 years in law enforcement and federal jurisprudence. You have assaulted a federal judge. You have committed perjury in this courtroom. You have violated every oath you took when you pinned that badge to your chest. Do you have anything to say? Donnelly's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. His face had gone from red to ashen. I didn't think so. Angela's gaze swept across the courtroom. For the record, I am Chief Judge Angela Brooks, appointed to this district 4 months ago. My formal installation was scheduled for next week, but I see no reason to delay the execution of my duties. She lifted the gavel. Officer Mark Donnelly, I hereby hold you in criminal contempt of court. Bailiff, actual bailiff, please take him into custody. 2 officers moved forward. Donnelly didn't resist as they removed his service weapon, his badge, his radio. The symbols of authority that had protected him for 18 years were stripped away in less than 30 seconds. Angela continued. Furthermore, I am ordering a full investigation into courthouse security protocols, the internal affairs process, and every settlement agreement involving Officer Donnelly. If other victims exist, and I believe they do, they will be contacted and offered the opportunity to reopen their cases. Vincent Caruso stood on unsteady legs. Your Honor, I'd like to request. Mr. Caruso, your client is going to federal prison. The only thing you should be requesting is a plea agreement. Angela's tone wasn't cruel, just final. This court is adjourned. 6 months later, Angela stood in the courthouse lobby, the same lobby where Donnelly had questioned her right to exist in the building. A bronze plaque now hung near the security checkpoint. In memory of Jerome Williams and all those silenced by institutional indifference. May this courthouse serve justice for everyone who enters. Donnelly was serving 36 months in a federal facility. The jury had awarded Angela $750,000, which she donated in full to the Brooks Judicial Reform Initiative. Body cameras were now mandatory for all courthouse security. Bias training was no longer optional. And on the third floor, in chambers overlooking Madison Street, Chief Judge Angela Brooks reviewed case files for the week ahead. The work was never finished. But for the first time in 18 years, the courthouse belonged to everyone.